Hello, and welcome back to the paddock. And Happy New Year! It's the first episode back since the holidays, and today's we're going to kick it off with the one and only McLaren CEO, Zac Brown. On today's episode, you have Melissa, Meg, and myself, Hannah, with LeAnne and Chelsea behind the scenes. But let's go ahead and dive on in with Melissa.
All right. So Zach Challen Brown, better known as Zac Brown, born on November 7th, 1971, from Los Angeles, California. Cali bred, born and raised. And fun fact, he's actually only 3 days after my birthday, so I thought that was kind of cool. I like seeing November Scorpio birthdays. While there isn't much information on his personal life on the internet, which I, again, always respect that, he is married to Tracy Brown and father to their two sons. He currently lives in Surrey, United Kingdom, and that's honestly about as much as I could find on him. So let's get into how his career began.
Zach began his racing career by go-karting, starting in 1986, winning 22 races in 5 seasons from 1986 to 1990. He then moved to Europe, where his first win was in Formula Ford 1600 at England's Donington Park. In the 1992 Formula Opel Lotus Benelux Series, sorry if I butchered that name, Brown secured top 10 finishes in each of the season's races. The following year, Zach finished fourth in the series. Brown has competed in both North America and Europe, specifically North America's Toyota Atlantic Series, in addition to the Formula Opel Lotus Benelux Series and 1994 British Formula 3 Championship. Zach made his Indy Lights debut at Laguna Seca in 1995 and competed in a German Formula 3 championship race in 1996. In 1997, Zach finished second in the GT2 category in the 24 Hours at Daytona with Rook Racing in a factory-supported Porsche 911 GT2. He also finished second in the 1997 12 Hours of Sebring. Some of the awards that Zach won during this time are the Jim Truman Award, the RFA Promising Young Star, the ARWB Sports Car Driver, and GKS Rookie of the Year. Now, moving along further into his career.
So Zach decided to take a break from professional racing from 2001 through 2005 to focus more on JMI, his marketing agency, which we'll cover more later on. By 2006, Zach returned to the racing world with an entry to the Brick Car 24 Hours race, where he won in his class as a member of the driver lineup from the More International Motorsport. The following year, Zach participated in the Ferrari Challenge Series as part of a 6-car stable field by Ferrari of Washington. He debuted in the series at Fontana, where Zach started the race in pole, then led every lap to victory. Iconic, if you ask me. Now, in 2008, Zach was competing full-time in his Ferrari Challenge Series campaign and won at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal. In 2009, Zach and Richard Dean co-founded United Air Sports, and more on this in a bit. And in turn, by 2010, the team had earned their first podium finish in the GT3 category at the Total 24 Hours of Spa. The team got their first win at the 2011 British GT Championship at Snetterton, and in 2012, the team had competed in Blancpain Endurance Series with the McLaren MP4 12C and the British GT Championship with Audi R8 LMS. They also competed in other races such as the Dubai 12-hour race, the Bathurst 12-hour, Mattel GT Cup, and the Spa 24 hours. Now, Zach won the round of the British GT Championship at Donington Park with Alvaro Parente as a wildcard entry for the team, driving in the McLaren MP4 12C GT3. That is a mouthful. And by 2013, Zach had participated for a full season in the British GT Championship with his team in the McLaren MP4, the same one as mentioned before. And he does continue to race in historic racing events, so that's actually kind of cool to see that he still likes to participate in that. So from his racing career now into his management roles.
In 1995, Zach founded Just Marketing International, or JMI, which grew to become the largest motorsport marketing agency in the world. In 2013, JMI was acquired by CSM, which is a division of Chime Communications Limited, and Zac became the company's CEO. He eventually gave up that position in the winter of 2016 to focus on responsibilities with McLaren. Now, on to his time with United Autosports. United Autosports is one of the largest motorsport teams in the UK and competes globally in different racing categories across the world. Like Melissa mentioned, it is co owned by Zac and racing driver Richard Dean. Founded in 2009, the team has raced in a number of championships using a variety of different cars across several classes and categories. Some of the drivers that have raced with the team are Fernando Alonso, Juan Pablo Montoya, Lando Norris, and Paul di Resta. The team currently competes in the FIA World Endurance Championship, European Le Mans Series, the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and GT4 European Series. It has also achieved podium finishes in other events around the world, such as the Macau GT Cup, the Spa 24 Hours, the Abu Dhabi 12 Hours, and the Bathurst 12-hour race in Australia. United Autosports also operates a historic division, which restores, prepares, and manages a range of historic sports cars and F1 race cars, some from Zac's own collection, as well as for some cars that customers own. These cars then compete globally at such events as the Rolex Monterey Motorsports Reunion, the Silverstone Classic, Monaco Historics, Le Mans Classic, Spa Classic, Nürburgring, Old Timers, and Goodwood Festival of Speed. In 2021, United Autosports entered the inaugural Extreme E Series, pairing with Andretti Autosport to enter the Andretti United XE team. When McLaren formed its own Extreme E program in 2022, Brown said that he was a quote-unquote silent partner in Andretti United XE and that he would only focusedly work with McLaren. And speaking of McLaren, now on to his time with McLaren Racing.
So on November 21st, 2016, Zac was announced as the executive director of McLaren Technology Group. And within 2 years, he was actually promoted to now becoming the CEO of the historic McLaren Formula One team and Technology Center on April 10th, 2018, which means as CEO, Zac has overall responsibility for not only the business, but including strategic direction, operational performance, marketing, and commercial development for the company as a whole. Now, I'm going to read a statement made by Zac Brown to Forbes back in 2021, and I think it kind of highlights his time, at least in that time period so far with McLaren. There have been some key moments like our first pole in a decade, our first win in a decade, our first 1-2 in 11 or 12 years, and everyone's been working so hard. When we started this journey, we were in a very difficult place. It's nice to celebrate with the team from time to time, but the celebrations are short lived because you're quickly getting back to work. So, when Zac took over McLaren, the team was running in the second half of the pack, and its days of winning races and competing for championships seemed long gone. Now, they're on the road to being back to the top slash are at the top of the pack with the incredible 2023 season they had with Oscar and Lando. I mean, incredible. Chef's kiss. Since Zac has taken over, we've seen McLaren expand into other motorsports as well with Extreme E, an all electric series, and IndyCar, a North American racing series, in 2023. Now, with IMSA, which is owned by NASCAR, being a potential additional series in the future, but Zac did shut down possible NASCAR additions due to an oval tracks that they race on. So, as you just kind of look at McLaren and his time with McLaren, he's not only set up McLaren for success, and they've grown into being a top, 4 or 5 top team and maybe 2024. brings even more success with the team, he's also expanded the McLaren brand into other motorsports to help like put their footprint on there and expand how they do some of their operations. So that's pretty phenomenal. And now that we've kind of talked about McLaren right now, let's talk about some of the future that we could see of Zac Brown and McLaren as a whole.
So, Zac Brown was quoted saying, "We hope to start the season kind of where we finished off," in reference to 2024. He also says, "It'll be interesting to see where everybody starts, but we're feeling good about our development. I think we learned a lot from 2023, so I anticipate a much stronger start to 24 than we had in 23. Overall, I think Zac Brown is feeling very positive about the direction that McLaren is going. And like Hanna talked about in her section about McLaren, ever since he joined, it seems like there have been some highs that they've had that they haven't had in years past before he was their CEO. So I know I'm excited to see where they go next year and beyond. And I believe the future is nothing but greatness in store for this team, hopefully.
I will say, despite some of the questionable decisions I have from like a personal wise on some of his driver lineup decisions, I will say he makes very good like precision like decisions that are for the team. And as much as I would love Danny, I am actually very happy that he brought Oscar onto the team, because seeing the 2023 season that he mentioned, or how like incredible it was, and then seeing like the future of what 2024 could be, and how they've talked so highly about like how the car could lead off from the start a lot better, um to like have an overall great season versus like latter half of the season, mid season. I'm pretty interested to see and excited for that. I just wish my Ferrari people understood that.
Yeah, going off of what Hannah said, Zach was quoted saying, "It's great to have the driver lineup that we have. We look at what we need to be a world championship team again. You've got to have two great drivers, and I think we're comfortable we can tick that box." So I think now that, don't get me wrong, I love Danny, but I think they have two drivers that are on a similar level and can push each other to compete against each other and push each other to be even better. That's exciting. And especially that the team feels super confident in both of their drivers. That's another thing that's even great. And that's on Zach because he picked Oscar and Lando as his drivers. So it's good precision choice making, like Hannah said, coming from Zach Brown.
I also really like, and this is kind of going back to a topic that I mentioned previously, the step forwards that McLaren has taken in being in other motorsports and making a bigger name for themselves. I mean, I know they're partnered with like Arrow and other ones in those divisions, so it's not just McLaren Racing. It's whatever name, but it's really cool because they've kind of put their footprint on like a US racing division. Now they put themselves in the electric car division. And then they have, the Formula One division. And, every team this year is sponsoring a Formula One Academy driver. So then they're putting their footprint in there. And then, you've got Bianca. And I couldn't even imagine being a CEO. So it's got to be a lot of decisions you have to make, and probably a lot of hard decisions. But from a Zach, and from a McLaren as a whole, have kind of put themselves in this like strategic decision from an overall perspective that kind of lines them up for the future. So I'm pretty excited to see like what other divisions they decide to join or like partner with. I mean, like Red Bull partners with like MotoGP. So like could we see that like as a future? Or like he said, maybe IMSA was in the future, which is a road car division similar to NASCAR. He said he was interested in that, which put them in a completely different perspective than the other racing motorsports he's in. Who knows? Very curious.
The guy definitely knows what the hell he is doing. Because when you guys were talking about like his opinion on like the driver lineup and everything, that man fought for Oscar for a reason, and that reason very well paid off, and it showed very well like this season how it just played out. Yeah, again, they started off very rocky. We won't go to that, but towards the end and everything, it definitely improved. And I really am hoping for a good start and a good season for them. I would really like to see them up there fighting with the Red Bulls, the Mercedes, the Ferraris. Just it would be nice to see just another team added on to the usual top three teams, someone else in that mix, especially with like how Oscar's rookie season was just one hell of a season. It's like my first season, like really seeing how like well a rookie could do, and just seeing like how they were doing the comparisons to like Lewis and everything. I was just like, oof. So it'll be fun to see how he is next year now that he has like a year under his belt, and see how that dynamic even grows within like him and Lando too. So, but really excited. That again, that man knows what he's doing, and credit to him for fighting for Oscar to have that spot.
And also talking about success, I believe from looking at different records and stuff, all of McLaren's teams in the other categories have been relatively successful, especially in the Extreme E and like IndyCar. I'm pretty sure Pato's finished in the top five pretty much for the last 2 seasons, 3 seasons. And even esports with their McLaren Shadow, I believe it is that they're called, they're great, their esports team. And another thing that I thought of was in comparison to other teams, at least with F1, Zac is really good at making sponsorship deals and deals with sponsors. So I think that also helps the team. Like, I don't see many other teams other than maybe Red Bull that has as many sponsors as McLaren. But I feel like McLaren's always doing some kind of sponsorship deal. So, yet again, the businessman Zac Brown strikes again. And I think that helps put money into the team for the development and also just get eyes on the team, especially since they have American sponsors, since Zac's American, and that brings in the American audience to the European sports and helps with IndyCar. I don't know. He's I think he's a lot smarter than people give him credit for. Maybe not with some decisions, but I think business wise, he's pretty smart.
And kind of piggybacking off what Megan said, I feel like US sponsors are becoming more and more prevalent in Formula One as a whole. And it just kind of symbolizes how much more important like Formula One and what it means to the US. And so it's pretty incredible that like these CEOs are like getting those sponsors like as the sport grows. But I also want to say like it's amazing that, and I don't see this with a lot of other like teams, is Zac is actually friends, like it feels like with his drivers and the people like and all that, because like he goes and plays like golf with like his drivers. I mean, Lando and Zac were in New York together, just like chilling before the Canada Grand Prix. Um, and they went to Toomey, which was a Lando sponsor, which was like funny. And then like Oscar and Zac went to what it was a festival together or something. And then like it was just there's just a lot of things that like you saw over the year where it was like you didn't have to do that because like you're probably not getting paid to like hang out with your boss, but like you enjoy each other's company and like he's willing to do this and you're willing to do that and like you must like that must work. And you don't see that very often, or at least if it is happening, it's not very publicized.
I do want to know how that conversation went with the Monster Energy drink CEO people, marketing people, sponsorship people, and Zac Brown, and how he convinced them to partnership or sponsorship with them and leave the other F1 team except for their one driver behind. Because I think that's I don't know, that's pretty iconic. Like you're able to like I don't talk your way businessman, talk your way through that and get that sponsorship, because that says a lot. Because when you guys were talking about that, I know I always like looking at their wheels with like the Google Chrome, because like when the wheels spin, the little Google Chrome wheel spins. But my favorite thing, what they do with their sponsorships around like June, July, Tomorrow World does this, or Tomorrowland, excuse me, does a sponsorship. So you'll literally see like the little like butterfly on the side of the car and everything. So you can look out for that like towards the end of July. It's like mid end of July. So I thought that was really cool that like they participate that, because it's usually around like whenever the Belgium Grand Prix is. I think it's Spa, so because of Boom Belgium where the festival is held. I dream of going to that festival. That's the only reason why I know all of that about the festival. Hannah, yeah, you're saying me too. Let's go. Let's go. Seriously, please. But yeah, who knows? Maybe we'll run into Lando and Martin. You know, they never know. But yeah,
We're
I think
putting
that's
it
pretty
in
cool.
right now. It's happening.
Let's book it.
Putting it in stone.
Talking more about the sponsorships, I also forgot this until Melissa brought this up. They had like digital screens on their cars because they had so many sponsorships that, remember, they like rolled through the different sponsorship on those screens. I forget when they implemented that on the livery this year. I'm not, I do you guys am I crazy? They did that. I remember them doing that. Because it was a whole big thing where it was like, oh, is it gonna be like weight on the car? And I just remember it was an electronic thing where the sponsorship should change on the car. Not that you'd be able to see it because the cars are going by super fast, but it was just another thing. Like, there's so many sponsorships, and with the sponsors, like Melissa said, they have like Google Chrome, Dell, Android, Jack Daniels, all these big names, and now Monster are their sponsors. So it's pretty incredible that they have all these big name sponsors working with them.
So Megan, real quick, I can confirm they did do a running rotating digital like screen of sponsorships on its race car, but only for the Bahrain Grand Prix. And it was like taken off real quick. It was like only shown for like a period.
Yeah, because I think there was controversy around it. There was some sort of,
Yeah.
I remember it was running for like a short period of time at the beginning, and now that makes sense that it was Bahrain.
It was a two screen display so you could see it from like either side of the cockpit. But yeah, it didn't last very long. But I will say, I wanted to piggyback off what Melissa said. I would love to just be a fly on the wall and hear some of these conversations when it comes to like brands and or like negotiating and like how that all works, because like a girl's curious sometimes. I mean, who wouldn't be curious on how this all works and some of the backdoor conversations? I mean, you get that drive to survive like backdoor conversations, but I really think those are more like theatrical, like put together than they are like actual. But could you imagine just like the team, like principals, or like even like Toto and like Zach and a couple other of them just in like a room, just like, and just being that fly on the wall, just listening? Feel like it'd be intriguing. Or even the FIA. Who wouldn't want to be in the room with the FIA when they're going over like penalties and all that shit?
I'd be stressed out. To rest.
Yeah, it's like that song from Hamilton, the room where it happened, that song. Like, I feel like that's playing in my mind right now after what you just said, Han. Like, I just want to know. And I feel like we got a small glimpse of it in DTS last season with the whole change your car thing, that little meeting of the team principals. But yeah, I would love to be a fly on the wall, like Han said. I just think some of the conversations, who knows what would happen. Now, one of the more interesting things I find about Zac Brown personally is he's one of the only CEOs that is at nearly every single race, if not every race, for Formula One. and he's also highly involved in the other classes of racing. And I think that's just incredible that he puts so much effort and time into it. And you can see that he's dedicated by how much he shows up. And for a hot sec, I thought he was actually the team principal of McLaren until I realized that they actually had a team principal and he was, in fact, the CEO. So that just goes to show how often he is seen at different events and races.
Yeah, I also didn't know. But I know like recently, when F1 Instagram posted like the driver lineup with the team principals and they saw Stella as a team principal, a lot of people found out that Zach is also not the CEO. So, or it's not the team principal, excuse me. So I think it again, it just goes to show how involved he is, but it also shows like he's very passionate about the work he does. And I just feel like maybe it just doesn't feel like so much like work for him because at least like when I was like doing my research on him, I was just like, oh, he's been participating in like a lot of different type of races. So I think that's pretty cool about him. But it's yeah, I thought for the longest too he was a team principal, and then I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes a lot more sense. But again, it's nice to see how involved he is with all the different teams across the board.
Yeah, it's also pretty cool from a CEO standpoint how involved he is because, a lot of times when you think of a CEO, they take a little bit more of like a back seat to it and kind of let, the chain kind of take care of everything. But no, he's like very involved, very driven, very like wanting things to succeed and wanting things to move in the right direction. And so, like, he continuously is like present to not only make sure everything probably goes correctly, um, but to be that support, be that like, oh, we'll get through this. And I know Andreas is not very like welcoming or warming or not like wanting to be in the media. So like he lets Zach like just take the reins and like handle that. And then he's like, I just want to focus on the team. So like Andreas, he's like, I got the team. Zach, go be pretty.
I mean, it's honestly valid because if Andreas hasn't had much like quote unquote PR training and Zach has, that could also be another benefit to why Zach is sent out to do all the media stuff. And the fact that Andreas has been able to focus more on the racing and the development of the car, it's helped. So why not? I mean, Zach is mainly featured in Drive to Survive instead of the team principals for the last couple of seasons. So I'll be curious to see with this new season if it's going to feature Stella at all or if it's mainly going to be Zach. But who knows? I guess we'll see soon. Oh, and also another thing, I totally completely forgot that I saw this while I was researching. Zach and Tony Kanaan raced together when they were young, so they've been friends for years. And I did not know that until I found a picture of the two of them from like the 80s or the 90s. And I was like, oh my gosh, that makes so much sense why they seem like besties. And Tony now works for McLaren on the IndyCar side, and he raced at the Indy 500. No, it's a cool little tidbit I found out while doing my research for Zach.
So now onto his personal life. So Zach is also an avid collector of historical documents and sporting memorabilia, as well as both road and racing cars. So it's kind of nice knowing that he is an avid collector. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say cute, but it's kind of like makes them a little bit more human, knowing that they have their little like things they like to collect or their little hobbies. So I think that's kind of nice to know.
Yeah, and like Melissa said, he's a collector of cars. I mean, he's got a very extensive collection. Anywhere from the 1000 BHP 1970 McLaren Can Am to a 2001 McLaren MP4 16 to even an MP4 6 McLaren that was driven by the great Ayrton Senna. So that's amazing. On that was the car that he used for his sixth and final victory at the Monaco Grand Prix, and many, many more. I mean, he's got a NASCAR car, and he's got other cars that are like pretty extensive. And a fun fact is this like whole collection of cars is actually jointly owned with him and Richard Dean. And so that's pretty exciting that you're like not fronting the cost like on your own, that like you build this collection together and you get to enjoy the cars as a whole.
When not collecting cars, you can see Zach out on the golf course with some of his drivers. Golf is one of Zach's favorite pastimes outside of racing that you can tell. And he is often seen on the green with one of his drivers, Lando Norris. In fact, he was even at the Netflix Cup that they had in Vegas for the Las Vegas GP. And he said on air that he's a better golfer than Lando and that he should be the one out there golfing instead of Lando. So I wonder what that has done to their golfing relationship. And I am curious to know and see who actually is the better golfer out of the two of them. I don't know if we'll ever find out because I don't know who will ever tell the truth, but we'll see.
You know what they should do? They should do a team principal golf tournament now. Then he would get what he wanted by participating in the Netflix Cup. You could do the same situation, but instead of like a driver, put a team principal. And then bam, best of both worlds. Yeah, and now to round out our episode, we're gonna do a funny like team principal moment that happened this past season. The media kind of slash Zach made it apparent that Zach was challenging Toto to a boxing match leading up to the Vegas Grand Prix. To our knowledge, it didn't happen. The man wanted to throw hands. Well, now if it happened in an underground like boxing match that wasn't made public, I mean, to each their own. I don't know who I'd want to win in this situation, but I can safely assume what most people would pick. And I wonder if this challenge is now going to be present going into the future of Vegas Grand Prix. So who knows? Only time will tell.
As much as I love all the driver spotlights that we do, I really enjoy learning about, the guys that kind of run the show. And so I really enjoyed this head papaya moment that we had this week. And I want to know any little surprising details that you didn't know about Zach before listening to this episode. Let us know on our socials. Everywhere we are at Paddock Girls Podcast, except for Twitter. There you can find us at Paddock Girls Pod. Thanks for joining us in the paddock. We'll see you next time.
See ya!
Bye. Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Bye bye.
Arrivederci.